Aino Corry has a brand new book about retrospective Antipatterns out. We invited her and the complete lineup from season 1 to a conversation about 2020 and looking forward at 2021. Please celebrate the returning light with us at the Book Club Yule special. This episode was made possible thanks to Gotopia.tech.
Thank you very much, Preben. Welcome to everybody. I've been looking so much forward to this. So we're going to do some sort of a retrospective over 2020 to learn something for 2021. And first, I'd like to ask all of you to answer perhaps short questions. I'll just call out your names and let you answer one by one. So Casey, we'll start with you. If you weren't here with us in this hour, what would you be doing instead?
I would actually be outside because it's it's quite a lovely day here, and I would be out enjoying the unusual weather for this far north Maine. It's like almost 60 degrees out and sunny, and I'm lucky enough to be on the ocean right now. So not too interesting. I would just be outside.
I hope it's not Celsius.
Sorry, that's 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, yeah. Erik, I guess you wouldn't be outside if you weren't here.
Well, it depends a bit. I mean, Stockholm, it's quite dark and cold these days. So I'd probably be on a Zoom call or a meetup call with a customer or someone on my team this hour of day.
Okay, so almost the same.
Yeah.
So Mike, what would you be doing if you weren't here?
I would probably be working on a writing project, doing some research and reading. I was doing that just before we got on the call, and I'll probably keep doing that right after. That's occupied a lot of my time this year.
Yeah. Dave, what would you be doing?
Well, believe it or not, I am working on a teddy bear.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I'm doing so far I'm up to 18 threads operating various parts of this teddy bear. And it's proving to be quite an interesting exercise in actor model and concurrency and trying to get things to synchronize.
You always learn something, don't you? And what about you, Richard? Are you making teddy bears as well?
No, I'd actually most likely be interviewing someone. So I work at No Red Inc. We make software for English teachers, and we're hiring SRE and full stack people right now. And because we use less common technologies like Elm and Haskell, we get a lot of, and Nix, we get a lot of applicants. And I've just been spending a lot of time interviewing them lately. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, okay. Well, almost the same then, I'd say. Saša, what about you?
Well, I would be probably wrapping up my job. It's about 5:30 p.m. here, and then go for a short walk outside. It's not like it's warm as in some other parts here, but it's still good enough to take a stroll.
Yeah. Martin, last but not least, what would you be doing if you weren't here?
Well, I've got a bunch of articles that have been being worked on by my colleagues. So I'm doing a bunch of reviewing and suggestions, and I guess what you'd call developmental editing. I've been doing quite a lot of that the last few years as I put other people's stuff onto my site. So I'll be doing that. Then at some point I will go outside for a walk, and sadly the trees have all gone, so it no longer looks like this, which it did just a month or so ago, but I have at least the photos to remind me of what it looked like.
No. That is beautiful. Thank you, all of you. So my next question, as I warned you, is what are positive things that happened in 2020 that we might be able to take with us or we can learn something from? And I'm just going to take the round again. So Casey, what are the positive things that happened in 2020 we can take with us?
That's a pretty deep question. I don't know. I live in the United States, so the election results going in one particular direction are positive, assuming that plays out the way that it should in January. Knock on wood. But on a personal note, the Chaos Engineering book came out, and our business Verica is doing great. So despite the macroeconomic circumstances, we've My team at least has been extremely lucky. Again, knock on wood, and none of us have caught COVID that we know of.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so far.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. What about you, Erik? Could you name some positive things in 2020?
Yeah, I think the whole Wardley mapping movement for visualizing strategy is gaining a lot of momentum. I mean, democratizing, or if that's an English word, I mean, making strategy democratic in the sense that everyone can do it. It's not only the big five consulting companies. I think that's a lot of good momentum there, and I'm really happy to see the Map Camp conference is online with several thousand people joining, and there's a lot of good things there, and it can help us all, from deep tech up to business, and help us all talk about important things and make important decisions together using these fantastic, beautiful, powerful tools called Wardley Maps.
So everybody can be happy with Wardley Maps in 2021. Thank you. And Mike, anything positive happening in 2020?
Yeah, I think on a personal level for me, I traveled quite a bit. I would typically be gone 40 weeks a year, traveling around the world, learning from all sorts of people. Of course, in 2020, I didn't travel much at all. My last trip was I returned on March 6th, and I haven't been anywhere else but my local community since. It's actually reminded me how nice it is to stay local. I've spent more time in the local community with my family, with friends here, and of course, so safely distancing and everything else. But I actually enjoy not being on a flight 2 or 3 times a week. So I think that's been a positive for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, I second the travel thing, except I have to say, just looking at the screen in front of me, I really, really, really miss the green room and meeting up with all you guys. It's kind of depressing that just how much my social life revolves around green rooms and cups of coffee. But anyway, I think another positive thing for me in this year has been reflecting on how technology has actually in some ways saved the world. That without we're sitting here on, a video call that has probably a total of maybe 40,000 miles worth of distance between people, just chatting quite naturally as if it was, okay, this is what we do now. That would be unimaginable 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And what's making it happen, as much of it is software. So I think we need to think hard about, just how much good these toys that we've built have ended up doing for everybody. And obviously, there's also been bad, which we can talk about next. But I think, we can actually focus on the good and celebrate that a little bit, and maybe blow our own horns just a bit and make the world aware of the fact that, we're not just people that wear pocket projectors and play, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, and it's very easy to play Dungeons and Dragons with people around the world with the technology that we built for it. So it's a circle, right? Yeah, Richard, anything positive?
Yeah, on the one hand, I definitely also agree with the making trips to other places like conferences. There's a whole group of friends I have that I only see at conferences because they're also speakers in the same kinds of things, and I miss them. But I will say a positive thing that's happened is that I am making a lot of connections, or a lot of deeper connections with people that I ordinarily would not, for geographic regions, have a chance to make connections with. So most weekends in 2020, I've gotten in the habit of doing pair programming with people from all over the place, just people working on the same kinds of side projects that I am. And that's people from not just all over the US, but all over the world, well, at least time zones permitting. It's just been amazing to get to know those people better and to make a deeper connection with them. And I know that normally, pre-pandemic, I had all the technology to do that, but I didn't, because I would instead, do things more locally in my community, etc. But now that I'm spending more time indoors, that sort of the downside of spending the time with them has decreased, and it's been a positive thing. And I think that is the silver lining to less in-person contact, is we can make other contacts that we wouldn't ordinarily make.
Yeah, that's true. And thank you for reminding me, because that's what I thought as well. Oh, now I can talk to people that I never get to talk to, but I forget to invite them. but it's a good pointer. Thank you. Saša, anything positive in 2020?
Yeah, well, I think that as a consequence of the COVID situation, the good thing is that the remote working has finally been, making huge breaks. So prior to this year, there was a lot of pushback against that, especially in larger corporations. And now, obviously, there was no choice but to somehow make it work. And I talked with some friends. I have been working myself remotely for like 6 years. But some of my friends who are working at larger companies, they had to go to the office, and now they are able to work from home. They're enjoying it. But what's interesting is that their management says that they will continue to do so even after the situation normalizes. So people have learned, and companies have learned, and management has learned that you can actually make this work.
Yeah, and that might be good for everybody's private social lives, and maybe also for the environment. Yeah. Martin again, last. Anything positive in 2020?
Yeah, well, on the purely personal front, definitely the not having to travel has been wonderful. I mean, I've spent this now pretty much the whole of the last year. I have not changed time zone, not been on an aeroplane. I mean, that has not happened since I was in my 20s, which was a long time ago, and that's been really good because I don't like travel, and also, frankly, I haven't had to speak at conferences, and I hate speaking at conferences, so that's been a plus as well. I like meeting up with people at conferences, but the actual getting on stage and giving talks, I hate it, and not having to do that. I had to do a few online things, but and I think they were actually worse, but I haven't had to do as many of them, so I suppose that's a positive. More broadly and less egotistically focused, I think one of the positive things for me was seeing how rapidly we were able to move our client base to working in a remote fashion as rapidly as we did. I mean, at ThoughtWorks, we got a bit of an early warning because we have quite an extensive operation in China. So we got to see exactly what had happened in China as the virus hit early, and what kind of coping mechanisms needed to be put in place, both for ourselves and for our clients. And the latter point is important because, I mean, we have been doing a lot of video calls like this since about 2011, 2012, when the video tech got good enough that we could operate globally. And it's the only way you can manage a global organization of our size was you doing a lot of video calls. But our clients weren't used to it. And so we learned a good bit from China, and then there was a very rapid period of a few weeks as the virus really hit in Europe and North America, where we were rapidly shifting, and we were able to get most of our client work over to that. And although we were worried that we were going to see, oh my God, this huge economics chaos and feared layoffs and that kind of thing, it hasn't happened. We haven't been growing as much as usual, but we have actually stayed stable. And that has a lot to do, I think, with getting clients more comfortable, even with the very highly collaborative style of software development that we do. I mean, we put a lot of focus on in-person inceptions and pair programming and very collaborative exercises. And trying to get those working remotely is obviously a good bit more challenging than a less collaborative organization would have found, but we were able to pull it off. And that has really pleased me because I think that will change the balance in the future. I don't agree with people who say, oh, that's it, the end of in-office working, we're all going to be remote first in the future. I suspect that's not going to happen, but I think there will be a rebalancing, and that rebalancing will shift significantly towards remote working in a way that's probably faster than it would have occurred otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll have an opportunity to look at it from both sides and see the positives and negatives instead of just defaulting to one thing. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And now the last round, I'm going to ask you all about something negative from 2020. I know it's hard to think of anything negative in 2020, but try. Casey, you go first.
Oh, wow. Something. So I think the thing that stands out to me that actually isn't the pandemic. It's that 2020 highlighted how quickly the gap is increasing between people who have economic and educational stability and those who don't. Dave, you talked about how software can is helping us survive this pandemic, and Richard, I know you work in education. Again, I'm in the U.S. Half this country apparently doesn't believe in science. 50% of people here say that they won't take a vaccine when it becomes available because they don't trust it. The results of the election, the income inequality that's becoming more apparent, this gap, that the wealth transfer over the past year to the billionaire class has been unprecedented. If those problems aren't solved, then I don't think any of us are going to really recognize what society looks like in a few years, and certainly it won't be pleasant. So we've got a lot of negative warning signs of what's headed our way if we don't address them now.
Definitely. And I like how you have the Death Star behind you, just to sort of put it
well, that's on Zoom. I'm not sure if people watching this, seeing the recording, will see that. They'll just see a green screen. So, Preben,
sorry.
You'll have to put that in.
Or edit me out. Right. Thank you, Casey. Erik?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, Dave, I mean, we can really be proud of all the work that software is doing in empowering us to work remotely and do these kind of, pair programming remotely, conferences remotely, all these things. But still, personally, I miss the people, I miss the interactions, the face-to-face and the serendipity of being at a conference and going into the hallway tracks and those kind of things. I really, really miss it badly. And I mean, we've been all remote since March 12th in our company, and it works really well. But we've met once since then. We went to a picnic in September, and apart from that, we've been following the recommendations, working remotely, work from home. And for me personally, I really miss the kind of social bonding, the chats along the water cooler, the fikas as we have in Sweden with the coffee breaks, those kind of things. I mean, I really, really miss it. I want to have it back.
Yeah. Yeah. +1. Mike?
Yeah, I think from a negative standpoint, I really experienced this year, and I think all of us probably have some version of, William Gibson's quote, "The future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed." Some of us have weathered this situation fairly well, others have weathered it very terribly. And that's been affecting, my family, my extended family, and as well as, everyone around the world. So I think one of the things that I was sort of faced with this year is that inequality, that lack of even distribution, and the fact that we live in a pretty fragile system, at least in the US. I mean, lots of things like toilet paper suddenly went missing in March and April. These are silly kinds of things, but all sorts of things didn't work well and still don't work well. And I was sort of reminded about that. I think hopefully there'll be a lot of lessons that we can take forward. But this year has been a pretty big reminder of how many things don't work as well as I had kind of assumed they had, and that was a surprise to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree. Dave?
Yeah, I think picking up on Casey's point about the lack of, quote, reality that some people feel, I think my biggest disappointment is that there has not emerged a leadership from the technical community that has put some of the misconceptions right. Right now, the tech community is being represented by Twitter and Facebook. And that's not what we do, and that's not what we are. And so I'm very disappointed that we have not taken an opportunity to try to explain to everybody what's involved in what we do. For example, this voting machine chaos, right? I have no idea whether or not voting machines are flawed, but I know that it would be possible to audit and to describe to people in kind of objective terms what's going on. And yet we're not doing that. And so all of these areas where we're leaving it up to individuals to decide what's true and what's false, we could do better than that. And that's really depressing me.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Richard?
Yeah. So as somebody who works in ed tech, teachers are getting hammered by the pandemic. I mean, it's really, really rough. It's difficult to overstate how much of a disruption it's been, and how even 6+ months into this thing, I mean, we're at like 9 months now. It's still chaos. I mean, it's still like everything is totally disrupted and way harder for them than it should be. And I'm glad that I'm able to help make that better with software for making software for teachers. But it's just it's heartbreaking to see like something as important as the institution of education just be in such a bad spot. And hopefully the pandemic will be over and things can go back to a more stable place. But it's really been eye-opening in a unequivocally negative way for me, just to see how hard things are for the entire class of teachers right now, and not to say nothing of students and parents who are also dealing with it from the other side.
Definitely. Yeah. As if it wasn't hard enough for teachers already.
Yeah.
Saša?
Well, so on a personal level, I would say what some colleagues mention as positive, it's the lack of travel. So I personally don't travel that much, and I really miss that. It was really fun to visit new places, to meet new people, and hang out. So that's definitely, and in general, of course, the lack of socializing. And I guess on a broader level, what I find really depressing as a consequence of COVID, but I mean, it was clear before that as well, is the fact that so many people just reject facts and science and just believe some crazy theories they found on the internet without any arguments or any logical reason. And I guess that was always the case, but I think this year it has been more evidence than ever, and it's something that as humanity maybe we need to think about how we can fix that.
Yeah, thank you. And Martin?
Yeah, well, it's a big list, isn't it, of things to be worried about in 2020. Not just COVID, but I mean, as people have said, the difficulties over the political polarization, and nobody's even mentioned global warming, which is sort of still the ticking time bomb that will make COVID look really like an amateur. So it's easy to take that negative look. But on the other hand, I remember when I was in my 20s thinking I probably wouldn't make it till my 30s because we'd have blown each other up with nuclear bombs by then. And we can kind of smile a little bit at that, but there was that definite feeling that was a very likely outcome. And I mean, one of the things I do for fun is read history books, and I've always been very much a history reader. And recently I've been reading a book about American politics in the 70s. And it's easy to forget how horribly polarized and nasty things were then, and how bad the situation was, on top of what looked like a really much more deep and permanent economic malaise than we feel now. And when you kind of look back, it does give you a better sense of perspective. And perhaps a sense of, well, maybe we'll find some way of muddling through this because we've muddled through things that in many ways looked worse at the time that they were in.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, it's good to take it all a little bit into perspective, because we completely forgot about the global warming, right? Because there's other things. That's how we are as humans. We can only actually focus on one thing at the time. We're not as good as at multitasking as we believe we are.
We've always said you should refactor continuously and fix any broken windows as soon as they occur, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think 2020 has really driven that point home for us. We're terrible at predicting the future, especially in years like this. The future's wild and unpredictable. So you don't know that you're going to have a chance later, that you'll have time, that you won't be involved in some other project, that you'll be able to go into the office, that whatever. So you kind of need to code like there's no tomorrow. At least don't leave things broken thinking I'll get to it later, because you might not have a later to get to it. So now's good.
But if I look at the things that you said, the positive and negative things, there's a lot about being more focused on where you are, traveling less, but also the backside of that medal is missing the people, the conference friends. I definitely do that as well. Speaking, interacting with people for real. But then there's a possibility that remote working is giving us, and remote meetings with one person, or remote talking to people on the other side of the world. But then I think that it seemed like there's a red line between the things that were bad, and that is, we are all part of the technological future and the technological current status. And we all appreciate the enormous responsibility that we as a tech community holds for everything. And for all the things we said, tech played a huge role. It was for the teachers teaching, for people knowing what are the facts and what is the science, and for not having this gap between people. But also the interesting thing about who's actually speaking on behalf of the tech community. It seems like we don't have anybody who takes that responsibility and saying, this is what tech is, this is how it works. I guess there are some YouTube videos here and there, but it's interesting to think if there could be some sort of a board or something like that who could say, listen, folks, this is what is possible and this is what is not possible. I see it like in very, very micro details when I have a team that develops software for a customer, and we have the customer looking at what has happened and what we can plan doing. And then if they see a tiny thing change, then they say, that couldn't have taken very long. And then when you ask the developers, it took a week to change that thing. And then there are other things that they think are huge or impossible, and that'll take an hour. And that understanding would be interesting to get out to people. So what should we learn? And now we're moving into the gentle, laid-back conversation. So now you can decide who's talking. Yeah.
So go ahead, Dave.
No. I was just laying back.
Oh, I was going to say one thing that has sort of come into focus for me is that there are levels of connection in the way that we communicate. And so I think of like text is, there's a lot of pros and cons to the medium, but it's not as much of a connection as voice. And voice is not quite as much of a connection as voice and video, which in turn is not quite as much of a connection as in person. And I'm using sort of not quite generously there, but just not having the ability to connect with people in person has really sort of driven home to me just how different these levels of connection are. And it's a nice reminder that on the one hand, there's some obvious upsides to a lot of the technology that we make, but there are also some obvious limitations. I mean, it's great that we're able to have this conversation right now, which by default we would not be able to have at all without technology. But at the same time, I think we would all be having a deeper level of connection with each other if we were in the same room somehow, having a connection. So it's interesting for those trade-offs to come into focus.
Do you think that's a generational thing? Because when I look at my kids, who many of their friends, even before this happened, were online, and they actually, when I was a kid, we used to go out and actually, meet with our friends. They very rarely get in a car and go somewhere and see somebody. And I'm wondering if that's actually generational, whether or not, the 20-year-olds actually are feeling the same kind of stress from this that, compared to us 1,000-year-old people.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I experienced that in the house because I've got a multi-generational house again. So I've been watching a lot of that. And I think we also have to keep in mind, we advanced the world through several centuries without any immediate, connections across the pond, so to speak. We've grown lots of things in our society and made lots of advances. So I think it is definitely generational, and there may be some kind of circle or cycle about it. But I think one of the things that really struck me this year is how many different levels there are to things. It turns out I miss a lot of travel, but not all of the travel, right? To sort of echo what Martin said, there are certain things that, I won't go back and do again. There are other things that I will. So I begin to focus on, what's a meaningful trip for me? What's going to be a great experience? Who do I really want to see? Not should I just go every single week to every conference that's available. So I think one of the things that I'm taking away from this is that I have a lot more control. I have a lot more choice than I thought I did, and I can act on those choices. And I think one of the gifts of technology in all sorts of aspects is the fact that we now do have more choices. We can choose to go visit people, or we can choose to go online. And of course, that choice, to invoke Gibson again, the choice is not evenly distributed. A lot of people don't have that choice. But I think that's the thing that really came up into my mind as I'm listening to us talk about it. It's sort of like the whole idea of what we automate and what we don't automate. Let's make personal experiences valuable and really heighten those, and let's automate the ones that don't need to be always in person. So there are lots of meetings I don't need to attend, but there are lots of green rooms that I will be able to attend in the future.
Well, and on the topic, getting back to the topic of tech leadership, a lot of those choices, those decisions that we're able to make are because of who's even invited to the conversation, right? So I think one of the main contributing factors for why we don't see tech leadership is because companies like Twitter and more so Facebook, Google, and the FANG companies very specifically have missions for profitability, not for demonstrating leadership or for changing the status quo. I mean, here once again we're a panel of mostly white men talking, reviewing these subjects. Tech does a terrible job of inviting the right people to the conversation, if we don't have passion behind the solutions, we know what the solutions are, but if we don't put the passion behind it to change that, then I don't think any of us are going to have a meaningful impact in a positive way.
But hooking on to that, Casey, I think we see some acts of leadership in the community, and I'm really happy to see people like Jessica Kerr and Kent Beck and also Mel Conway. I mean, really leading by example in talking about some kind of applied systems thinking, see the whole system and see the feedback loops and see what good they can do and what bad these can do. So I think those gives me hope, at least, that there are some voices and I mean about looking at bigger things like climate change or be it COVID and things that where we use those kind of simple methods of applied system thinking and use that not only for our tech stacks and our architectures, but also for the socio-technical systems and what's going on there.
Yeah, I think to pick up on what you, Eric, were just saying and what Dave was saying earlier, I remember as a kid, and Martin may remember this too, I'm not labeling you, but Union of Concerned Scientists. There's this organization that used to talk about the atomic bomb. They used to talk about how the role that science plays and how we need to be really careful. To pick up on what Dave's saying, maybe we need some kind of Union of Concern Informatics or Union of Concern Tech or something like that. Some group of people that do come out and speak on a regular basis and address the kinds of things that Eric's talking about and that Casey's talking about, that Richard lives every day. Like, who's affected by this and what are we doing and how are we making change possible, or reducing the number of people in the room rather than allowing or enabling more people in the room. So I think we have lots of opportunity there too.
And I think that sort of hits the nail on the head, because I think in a lot of cases there's a lot of concern, but not a lot of awareness outside of sort of the tech circles that concern exists. Like when I talk to my parents, sometimes they'll ask me like, hey, what do you think about this thing? And I'll be like, oh, well, everybody thinks that's a bad idea, or everybody's concerned about that, or something like that. When I say everybody, I mean like all the tech people that I talk to. But why would my parents know that? That's not going to be on the evening news. That's not going to be in any of the, any of the information feeds that they are a part of. So, yeah, I don't have a prescription for what to do about that, but I think you're right that is something more formal that we can all, get behind and say, yeah, this is actually what we're in favor of or what we're concerned about. Would go a long way towards alleviating that misperception that we all think exactly what Facebook and Google's public statements say.
So right now there's the Netflix series or film. Is it called The Social Dilemma? Have you seen that one? The one about social media and how it affects people? Well, maybe you should see it, because all sort of normal people are seeing it and they are learning how SoMe is working or not working from that. I think it's called The Social Dilemma. So I think it's both ways. It's not just us talking to them, but also us looking at what is the information that they get. And I found it interesting to see that social dilemma because all my friends had watched it and I didn't want to watch it because I already know. But it's interesting to see what they are being fed.
I try not to watch Netflix, but I'm kidding. I used to work at Netflix. Again, we just have to be careful about who we mean by we. And like when we talk about like setting up a board or organizations that speak on behalf of tech, we don't have the ratio of representation right. And if we figure that out, equality is a better means of ensuring that there's a better discussion because of the voices that are present. It reminds me of the programs we have to address income inequality and poverty. And there are so many programs and organizations designed to alleviate poverty, when it turns out the best thing you can do to alleviate poverty is give people money. It's hands down the best longitudinal results you can get is just give poor people more money. We need more voices, more representational voices in this community, and a lot of the leadership problems I think will be, we won't have to build institutions or procedures to enforce that.
Well, I think maybe we need to think about what is the postmodern equivalent of a board, because the idea that there is a group of people who have been blessed somehow with the ability to speak on behalf of 4 million other people sounds a bit 1960s to me. In maybe what we need to be doing is to think about how would we organize something which is more, quote, agile, unquote, than that, something that has no center, but instead somehow is automatically representative, something you can trust simply because of the law of large numbers.
Yeah, like Wikipedia. But I think that we have to pretend to say goodbye now because I know that some people have to leave. So let's make the way winking.
Okay. Very nice talking to you all.
Okay.
Very nice talking to you all.
Yep.
Take care.
Yep.
Subscribe to the GOTO YouTube channel now for ad-free videos released almost daily, and join the experts in person or online at any upcoming GOTO conference using the promo code Book Club. Visit gotopia.tech to learn more.